Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud to stand to contribute to the debate on this motion, which seeks to extend the state of emergency up to a period in the month of May. Before I continue, Mr. Speaker, I wish to ask for leave just for a few seconds to extend sincere condolences to a family very dear to me. You may have heard, Mr. Speaker, of the unfortunate suspected suicide of a young man in Greece in Vieux-Fort North. I wish to extend condolences to Sister Claret and Brother Loai. Very sad situation. And when these things happen, the whole community, this is not just for parents, but for the whole community and the country to ask questions. Why are so many people suspected to be killing, we don't know for sure, but why are so many people, especially when young people find themselves in these situations, Mr. Speaker, it is very sad. I will never do like a particular member to say that it has to do with the economic situation of the country, and we should never do that. But Mr. Speaker, I wish to say it's very sad, and let us hope the whole community comes around this family as they grieve. Mr. Speaker, our St. Lucia is in a COVID-19 disaster, and it is being managed by show rather than by science, logics, and common sense. Mr. Speaker, I sat both in awe and in amazement when this morning the Prime Minister addressed the House, and when you as Speaker called on him to provide a statement by ministers, I hurriedly pulled my notebook because I expected, Mr. Speaker, to receive a report on the dire COVID-19 situation by the head of our government. Instead, Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister did is symptomatic of the conscience of this government. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister indicated this morning that 20 souls have gone to meet their Maker as a result of the COVID-19 negative, as a result of the possible impact of COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, while it is yet to be confirmed, reports reaching me indicate that there may be more souls who have gone to meet their Maker even after the Prime Minister made his statement. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, when I heard the Prime Minister speak about St. Lucia's 42nd St. Lucia Independence celebrations, and he presented this sheet of paper, or two sheets of paper, in yellow colors and blue colors, and he spoke about radio shows and mask on challenge and TikTok dance challenge, national billboards, independence vibes, virtual town hall, staying afloat, diaspora program, the independence address, legacy concert highlights showing best Calypsonians, the Prime Minister's playlist, 42 new and old artists, nearly 100 musicians, singers, sound engineers, and so on. The best videos of St. Lucia, fireworks display, military display. Mr. Speaker, I have an endearment to independence and what our country stands for at 42. But nothing, Mr. Speaker, while you can speak of preparing for independence celebrations, at a time like this, when we are debating the extension to the state of emergency laws in St. Lucia, and the statement by the Prime Minister speaks about mask on challenge and so on. And even though he had said this, Mr. Speaker, I was looking forward to a solemn statement about what's happening in St. Lucia. And when I listened to the debate and the contributions of members opposite, it's as if everything is normal. So we're talking about what SLP did, what UWP didn't do, what that one did in 15 years. And for me, Mr. Speaker, the reality of people dying, possibly over 20 people dying, seem to have escaped this Prime Minister and his government. And so, my contribution to this debate, Mr. Speaker, touches on this, that maybe this government has not realized what's happening in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. And maybe, as the comrade and member for Denry North indicated, God forbid, but it may be possible that these 20 souls may not necessarily have connections to them. And so, the debate today goes on as if it's business as usual. So people die, people get sick, and let's talk about what UWP did and what SLP did. As if it's not a particular time in this country, Mr. Speaker. And I recall something I read somewhere. And I think it was Martin Luther King who said some part of a phrase which says, I think I read somewhere that so and so. So I'm not ascribing this to be original. But I read somewhere, Mr. Speaker, that in 1939, when the Germans were bombing their way towards England, the Prime Minister then, Chamberlain, at 6 p.m., when things were getting difficult and when there was a crisis in the country, at 6 p.m. in the evening, Chamberlain, the then Prime Minister of England, when he addressed Parliament, he spoke firmly. It's as if all Papi Showtime finished. And I quote, Chamberlain said in 1939, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, "The time has come when action rather than speech is required," unquote. That is what Chamberlain said in 1939, when the Germans were approaching. So basically he was saying, Mr. Speaker, you see this thing in Parliament about that one saying that one did this and that one. The time has come when action rather than speech is required. Action rather than speech. And so, Mr. Speaker, all of this thing about who did this and who did that, about rally, it's as if, Mr. Speaker, they don't know what time it is. And so I continue to extend condolences to the families of all the people who have died, all the souls. I express condolences on behalf of the opposition. And I take the opportunity on behalf of the whole Parliament, Mr. Speaker, to extend condolences to all of the families of all of the people who have died as a result of COVID-19 in this war, in this disaster which we face. Mr. Speaker, this disaster is looked upon as if it's a must-see event. And so when you listen to members opposite, it's as if this is a show. And the member for Onslow Canaries continue with the charade and the show. He still talks about we are doing the best of this and we are doing the best of that, and 600 people were accosted by the police and so on. It's as if people's lives don't matter. The show must go on. The 90-day state of emergency on its own, Mr. Speaker, does not solve the inefficiencies of the government. As the member for Castries South, my colleague, said, and my good friend said to us earlier, that a state of emergency gives the Prime Minister extraordinary powers. And while in the last debate, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said the government did not abuse these powers. We are yet to know whether the government abused these powers, because these powers afford the government the opportunity to do anything it wants with procurement. These powers afford the government the opportunity to do anything they want with law enforcement. I don't want to include what I saw in social media a while ago with our wardens assisting the police with arresting certain plants that I didn't see with masks. But let's put that on the side. We can judge, Mr. Speaker, the performance of this government and the seriousness with which we must take the extension of the state of emergency. We can judge by the first time they did it. What happened the first time? When the government came to Parliament to extend the state of emergency, I recall the debates. I recall colleagues on our side warning the government, pleading with the government, and what did we see? We saw confusion. We saw confusion with the fishers. Nobody took time at the time to put arrangements in place for the fishers. We saw confusion with farmers. At the time, they did not consider the arrangements for farmers. We saw confusion with the opening of certain stores. People were clamoring, how come this store is open and that store is not open? We saw confusion with maintaining the protocols. That is what happened the last time this government came to extend the state of emergency. And so how am I going to judge what will happen in the next few weeks, in the 90 days? I use what they did before. And the last time we saw, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and a number of his ministers visibly flaunting the protocols. The pictures are there. They speak about a march on the 4th of October. When did they have their youth meeting in this large hall? So many young people without masks. Wasn't it the 4th of October also? Or thereabout? Wasn't it that same time? And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I don't have time today for who did this and who did that. Because the same people who are telling you that is the Labour Party who caused spread of COVID, on that same day, the pictures are there. They had young people in a hall sitting next to each other, leg to leg, with parliamentarians, with ministers, without masks. And they still come to Parliament today as if they don't know what time it is. I repeat what Chamberlain said at the time, Mr. Speaker, in 1939. The time has come when action rather than speech is required. That is the time. Mr. Speaker, this state of emergency, the history again, when you look at the attitude of this government by way of its protocols and its statutory instruments to ordinary St. Lucians, you have to be concerned. The people of St. Lucia have to be concerned. Look at the Gazette, volume 190 of Wednesday, February 3rd, 2021. Look at the state of emergency regulations. It speaks, section 9, Mr. Speaker, speaks to a national or resident may be required to take a test. And when you go down through the section, a national or resident, there is wide debate among lawyers and other pundits about whether the government deliberately put this in there so that they will shield certain visitors. You have to understand why St. Lucians, as the leader of the opposition said, do not trust this government and what they see. You remember the regulations, Mr. Speaker? When the government targeted locals who were entering ports. You remember these 3 or 4 days or 7 days when fishers could not go out to sea? And they raised a ruckus, Mr. Speaker. So the people are concerned and they are worried. They don't trust you. Not you, Mr. Speaker. They don't trust the government. So it's not that we don't want the protocols. The people of St. Lucia are saying, what time is it? Every time we get the notices from the Ministry of Health, one person has died, another 2 have died, 200 something cases, 80 something cases. The government does not know what time it is, Mr. Speaker. And the people are seeing the Prime Minister and his ministers, or the Prime Minister with his ministers, all around the place, doing the same things that they say to us in the protocols that we should not be doing. How do you expect, Mr. Speaker, the people to trust this government? During the debate on the last extension of the state of emergency last year, Mr. Speaker, I asked a following question. I asked a few questions. I will ask them again. Which responsible government comes to a parliament after so many people are dying and so many people are getting infected in this country? Which responsible government comes to a parliament without a report and to say, the last time we extended the state of emergency, here are the things that we asked for. Today is the 9th of February. We believe we should extend it again. Here are the different things, the results of the work that we did. We spent $10 million. We bought X number of PPEs. We did so and so. And we did all of these things. And the results are that over 19 or 18 people or souls have gone to meet the Maker because of COVID-19. We have so many, we have hundreds, over 2,000 cases. So we need this, and we are going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mr. Speaker, the member for Castries South said it. This Prime Minister has called us all kinds of names in St. Lucia, and he believes it because he does not think that he needs to come to the House to account to anybody. So the Prime Minister comes to the House with a motion and a speech and a piece of paper which says things about challenges and songs and so on. All of them are wonderful, but not within the context of a COVID-19 where we need a Prime Minister and a leader who knows what time it is. This Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, has not realized what time it is. The government has not adequately accounted to the people of St. Lucia for its expenditure and its actions where COVID-19 is concerned. What are the resources, the new resources, which the government will put in place to change the trajectory, Mr. Speaker? What is the current state of the respiratory hospital? I heard the member for Ancillary Canneries almost jokingly saying that if the respirators are in a box, it means that we don't need to use them, and that's a good thing. Mr. Speaker, I have no medical, well, the little medical knowledge that I have is from what doctors tell me. But Mr. Speaker, can you believe a parliamentarian saying this, Mr. Speaker? Instead of giving the member for Castries South an explanation, he goes on to glorify the fact that the respirators are in boxes on the floor on a shelf somewhere. This means that people don't need them, and that's why they're there. Can you believe this? So, if the people of St. Lucia do not need the respirators, how come people are dying like that? How come? Does it mean, Mr. Speaker, you heard them grumbling at the back there, Mr. Speaker? They will grumble because they don't know what time it is. They don't know what time it is. Mr. Speaker, all of a sudden they have all become experts on the use of respirators. You are saying to the world, Mr. Speaker, the member for Ancillary Canneries said to the world that the reason we have respirators in boxes is because we do not need them. That's the fact. That is what he said. Because we don't need them. So, Mr. Speaker, someone is saying to me that he said ventilators. But whatever, is it ventilators or respirators? So, Mr. Speaker, we are saying to the argument still stands, you know, we are saying to the world that we have the equipment. We don't need them. We do not need them, but increasingly our people are dying and we are not using them. Mr. Speaker, to me, as I said before, I'm not a medical doctor, but it is for the government to explain to the parliament what all of this means. So don't chastise me and tell me I don't know what I'm saying. You will have your chance to explain to the people of St. Lucia, because you are the best in the world. You are the best in the Caribbean. You are the number one. You have the best CMO ever. And you don't know what time it is. So if I'm not making sense, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the ventilators and the respirators, I want the government to explain to the people of St. Lucia. Explain that statement to them. I don't know. Explain. So, Mr. Speaker, this government does not account. They prefer to laugh while people are dying. That is the state of this government. So they mumble and grumble. The one who said economic situation that causing suicide, you hear him grumble at the back there? Mr. Speaker, you cannot trust the government. You cannot trust the government. Not even at the community level. Not even at the community level, Mr. Speaker, can you trust the government. In this COVID-19 situation, one would expect that the government would mobilize all community organizations, mobilize everyone, and include the duly elected representatives in the decision-making process. Mr. Speaker, even at the level of the constituency councils, in Beaufort North, in these COVID-19 times and state of emergency and all of that, the Beaufort North Constituency Council was put together. They are meeting, they are having meetings, and the government has never written to me as parliamentary rep regarding this situation. Mr. Speaker, I took the step, Mr. Speaker, of calling the ministry, trying to find out what the problem was. The young people, the lady explained to me, and knowing that the decision was above her pay grade, I wrote a formal letter to the ministry indicating that the government had not satisfied the law regarding constituency councils. And I even included my nominee. I've gone that far. No response. And the Beaufort North Constituency Council continues to hold meetings. So, Mr. Speaker, up to now, the government has not contacted me as duly elected parliamentary representative. The distribution of electronic devices, same thing. The timing of the updates from the Ministry of Health. Mr. Speaker, how can the country trust this government? The provision and delivery of information is not timely. One time you got it, Mr. Speaker, at midday. Another time, you begin to get it at 7 p.m. Now you get it at 9 p.m. Sometimes you don't get it at all. This says to us that there are problems with the system. And if we are at war, and if we are trying to fight this pandemic, the government need to account to the people. How come it's taking so long for some people to get their test results? How come some returning nationals who are awaiting their test results to travel back to the United States are reporting, some of them from my constituency, that even while they are waiting for the flight, the test results don't come and they have to buy another ticket to go back because they cannot enter the United States without the test results. These are the real things that I am getting as a parliamentary representative. How come? And if we are the best in the world and the best in everything, how come our people have to purchase another ticket because they were told they will get their test results, their flight is booked, the date for returning is booked, and the people are stuck in St. Lucia and they have to buy another ticket to go back? Mr. Speaker, the government doesn't know what time it is. How come, Mr. Speaker, we are being told that the UK variant of which we speak, which is feared by so many countries, may have been in St. Lucia in December. Local authorities suspected so, but it's weeks and weeks after. Yes, I know you have to wait for confirmation, but nobody indicates that we suspect the UK variant is in St. Lucia. And by the way, since that other case, how many other cases of the UK variant have we detected in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker? Accountability. Is it the UK variant which is running amok? Is it the UK variant which spreads faster than the other variants? Is that what's running amok in St. Lucia? Can somebody tell us? Can somebody tell us? So for them, Mr. Speaker, it is laughing time today because this is a show. The extension of the state of emergency for them is a show. So they are not focused on the recovery of St. Lucians, Mr. Speaker, as they say. We see the evidence all around St. Lucia that when they come to Parliament, they say one thing: let's come together, let's do this together. But when they're out of Parliament, they tell people, don't even visit your relatives in another house. So if it's in the protocols, and I live at Piero, and I wish to visit my relative at Grace, the police can arrest me, but ministers can go everywhere. How can people trust you when you're doing that? Mr. Speaker, my colleagues this morning spoke to the stories. And there are many stories, Mr. Speaker. I don't think this government understands fully what the people are going through. I don't think this government understands when people tell you they're closing their business places, police come, they arrest them, take them to the station days after. They have to report every Wednesday to the police station because they're being told that their business place, the door to their bar was open at 10 to 11. I don't think the government understands that there are few fishers in my constituency and in other constituencies who do bottom gill net fishing, and they must go at 11 o'clock in the night thereabout to set the gill nets for about 6 hours to 7 hours. And when they confront the Department of Fisheries, or when they consult with them, the department has no answers for them. I don't think the government understands that. I don't think the government understands that these same fishers and these same people, that's all they depend on for their livelihoods. Here a minister of government say that how come visitors come and they cannot have wine to drink when the police arrest them with the little shops in Piero and Bellevue and Grace making a little $25, but they had a minister with responsibility for tourism saying How can people come to St. Lucia and not have wine to drink? But they, in Vieux-Fort North and Pierrot and all over St. Lucia, cannot drink their wine and sell their wine. How do you expect people to understand that? How do you expect people to understand that? How do you expect people to understand, Mr. Speaker, that the same government which said that laptops and so on, napani pièce gain ki an sa, but elections are fast approaching, and they said they're giving them away. At least in my constituency, there are 545 primary school children who are at home, most of them without devices, and you do not hear a response from the government. You don't hear a response for Wi-Fi. How do they understand that? How do people who fad fishers, Mr. Speaker, they are quarreling and disturbing me because they don't understand these things. In my constituency, Mr. Speaker, in Vieux-Fort North, there are fishers, all they depend on is the fad. For those who can go to certain businesses from the plane and enjoy it from morning to night, the fishers of Vieux-Fort North, the fad fishers, must go, most of them go in the night. That's how they feed their families. The hairdressers at Grace and Pierrot, and Mars and Skitters and so many of them, they can't deal with their operations. And if the government is saying that there is a state of emergency, if the government is saying that there is a state of emergency, this government has not detailed, Mr. Speaker, how all of these people would be assisted. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and his government, in particular the Prime Minister and the member for ancillary canneries, they know exactly how many breaches the police have intercepted. Again, you can see the conscience of this government, you know. They can come to Parliament and tell you that the police have arrested or intercepted 600 breaches. And that means the police is doing a good job and they're arresting people. 600 breaches. I applaud the police for doing their work. But Mr. Speaker, I wish the Prime Minister and his government could detail in numbers the sacrifices that the nurses and the fire officers and all of these people, and even the sacrifices that the police themselves have to make because of the inefficiency of his government. I wish the Prime Minister, just as he's saying that the police has 600 breaches, I wish the Prime Minister can detail the number of small businesses with bars and restaurants who have had to close for 21 days. In my constituency, I know the number. It is 90. And each of these people, each of these small businesses, they employ 1 or 2 people, small restaurants and bars. And so you're talking about over 140 people for the 21 days who are out of work. You can talk about 600 breaches, but you can't talk about all of these people who are being affected without help from you. So, Mr. Speaker, what we are saying to you is this. The government has not detailed how these people will be assisted. And we are saying to them, Mr. Speaker, that a 90-day state of emergency is going to create more hardship.
Honorable members, honorable member, please wear your mask. No mask. Honorable member and Prime Minister, honorable Prime Minister and member for Castle South. Proceed, honorable member of Vieux-Fort North.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the government has not indicated to these small business people how they are going to be assisted with this 90-day extension of the state of emergency. The government has not done so. And whatever form of shutdown, whatever form of stress these small business people in my constituency and the rest of St. Lucia will feel, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has not detailed how he's going to assist. And they are speaking about our proposals. All we have said from day one, that whatever measures the government is taking, that they must put the life of people, they must ensure that they give people assistance. They must ensure of it. Mr. Speaker, I want to say to you, Mr. Speaker, that the government has not demonstrated to us that they are serious about the extension of the state of emergency, and they have not given us the reasons why they want the state of emergency. So the cases are going up, let's have a state of emergency. Any serious government, Mr. Speaker, and St. Lucians who are listening would know that if you have a crisis, as we do, you have a crisis, you don't come to the house and say, we have 2,000 cases, we have at least 18 or 19 deaths. We want a state of emergency to go up to May 16th. By the end of May 16th, this is what we want. We want the numbers to go down by 75%. And for the numbers to go down by 75%, here are the things we are going to do. Any serious Prime Minister or government, Mr. Speaker, comes to the House with that. And if we want the numbers to go down by 75% by that date, then the plan for better testing and tracing is 1, 2, 3. We have met with Cabinet and we have put aside X amount of dollars for that particular goal. A serious Prime Minister would come to the House and say that we will increase the resources to the doctors and the nurses and the fire people and the frontline workers by X amount of millions between now and May 16th because we want to reduce the cases by 75%. A serious Prime Minister would come to the House and say the number of testing kits will go up by X%, and this is the amount of money we are going to spend if we want to reduce the cases by 75 or 95%. A serious Prime Minister would say that we will have second testing for tourists and travelers who come into this country. Any serious Prime Minister would do that. A serious Prime Minister would say that we will have a 3-day requirement for tests coming into this country. A serious Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, would announce a serious investigation into the new UK variant and tell the people of St. Lucia the truth. Any serious Prime Minister would do this. And any serious Prime Minister would come to the House and say immediately we are going to work on Wi-Fi across St. Lucia and the expansion of tablets so that our people can go through this situation. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? They come and they laugh. They laugh. They laugh in the face of possibly, the Prime Minister said 20 deaths. And I'm hearing that there may be more. So it's the usual House thing. So they come here and they laugh because they don't know what time it is, Mr. Speaker. They laugh. Ek yoga vini ek bagay politik, ek blame zafè politik, ek Labour Party parce que en opinion moi, Mr. Speaker, gouvernement pas mêlé ki le ye. It is 3 months and a few days to the end of the 5-year term in government, Mr. Speaker. 3 months and a few days. Il y a 3 mois et yon de jours pour 5 l'année au bout. Avec loi d'un désastre, le gouvernement a fait à dit c'est un show. Premier ministre là venu bon matin avec 20 moni disent à mort. C'est pas blague ou ça, Mr. Speaker. 20 moni à mort et nous attendons peut-être l'année plus avec premier ministre là venu en parlement avec un papier indépendance avec ça bon indépendance nous pour observer ou bien garder indépendance. Mais premier ministre était plus content parler about show, about band, about music, about mass challenge, about bagaille les TikTok. Plutôt, premier ministre là adressé les affaires sérieuses COVID-19 au pays Saint-Lucie. Mais explique ça me dit c'est premier ministre là en les actions même pas qu'à mouture qui sérieux les affaires COVID-19, il a mettre un protocole en place et c'est Dada Saint-Lucien il a pigé avec ces protocole là. Dada Saint-Lucien. Tout l'autre monde ça fait ça yo vle, yo ça ni dit 20 hôtel, ministre tourisme dit ça, qui manière touriste ça vient Saint-Lucien qui passe à boire divin. Mais gouvernement a pigé Dada janvier for 9 qui a vendu la bière pour 21 jours. Yo a pigé nous monsieur speaker. C'est ça Jean Saint-Lucie passe à comprendre. Jean Saint-Lucie passe à comprendre qui manière gouvernement ça là qu'a fait quoi dit, il passe à qui est. Avec dernièrement, moi dit, Mr. Speaker, si le gouvernement ça a été sérieux, il était quand il vient dans le Parlement avec 10 Saint-Lucien, combien l'argent ils ont dépassé dans les affaires COVID-19 ça là? Combien l'argent ils ont dépensé en les tester? L'opposition a dit pour grandir tester, avec faire plus tester. Combien l'argent le Premier ministre là a dépensé en les ça? L'opposition a dit mettez en l'autre place en sous de pays pour mettre les gens qui ont Covid pour venir plus meilleur. Gens qui ont Covid, ils ont dit aïe la caillou, ça a passé côté ils aller, ils ont gens qui aller en autobus, gens qui aller en minibus qui descend vieux force et qui ont espérer result alors 10 jours, ils ont crié et dit ils ont Covid. Combien de gens ont été affectés à les minibus là? Monsieur Speaker, le gouvernement ça pède, il passe à ça qu'il a fait. Il passe à ça qu'il a fait. Et qui vient demander pour un state of emergency, et moi cadeau. Quand c'est collègue moi a dit avant. Moi-même, quoi, le gouvernement a fait ça pour piger cette lycée pli. Avec pour faire ça, il veut. C'est mon l'hôtel qui a besoin de vin, il y a les catamarans, il a fait toute qualité bagaille avec cette lycée même, il a blâmé cette lycée. Moi, je dis COVID-19 là qui sort en Amérique là, COVID-19 là, combien l'autre cas nous cette lycée? Yo joué un cas depuis décembre, yo ka testé cas, Mr. Speaker. Et que yo voyez combien si men avant dit nous. Gouvernement ça c'est le yo mauvais, Mr. Speaker. Yo c'est le avec gouvernement ça a pas qu'à faire. À quoi ils savent qu'il est yé. Il pas qu'à faire à quoi dit moun ka mort. À quoi dit c'est un blague. Quand ça yo vient dans parlement ka bay blague. Ça a dit ça qui ça les bas affaires, qui ça font beaux affaires. Et moun ka mort. Et peut-être si c'était famille, Mr. Speaker, qui était qu'à moins COVID-19 comme ça, il aurait qu'à faire une différence. So, Mr. Speaker, je regarde. Nous allons encourager tout le monde pour suivre ce protocole-là, qu'on nous a toujours dit. Mais ça, le gouvernement voulait faire pour longer state of emergency, ça là. Nous, le gouvernement, ça fait un chat et l'autre bagaille pour faire ça. Pas même docteur gouvernement qui a coûté. Docteur dit ça pour faire, pas même docteur qui a coûté. Moi je dis que tu as barbe avec si et tout quand des bagages comme ça. Premier ministre ça n'a pas coûté personne. Il même dit I don't listen to anybody. Il même dit il n'a pas coûté personne. So Mr. Speaker, je demande pour aider janvier 9, tous ces gens en business qui sont fermés, c'est hairdresser, c'est gens qui sont restaurant avec bar. Tous ces janvier 9 là, avec Olivier Saint-Lucie, je demande ces vendeurs, je demande aider ces bus drivers, si vous avez pigé dada encore, bayo anti-aider. So, Mr. Speaker, dernier bagage que je dis avant moi, c'est soulagement qui a venu. Soulagement qui a venu, Mr. Speaker. Soulagement qui a venu. Nous demandons Jean Saint-Lucie pour Tchébé Wed. Avec préparer corps parce que soulagement qu'a venu avec Philippe J. Pierre et Saint-Louis Libre Party. C'est moun sa la selewa, en tiye yo ale do moun set lisi. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.